What's up and welcome back to Interpreting the Scares. Today we're closing out our Resident Evil marathon of films with the final film in the series starring Milla Jovovich. It's Resident Evil: The Final Chapter. Now here's the thing about this film series, guys. It is highly inconsistent. Each one feels distinctly different from one another and has a range of plot holes that usually follow. But the good thing about that is that these differences often stand out as memorable. You know which one's which, right? I mean, I remember the first film because it's the first movie, but I also remember it for The Hive, for introducing Alice, and for having a bunch of shoutouts to the video game series that I dug. I remember the second film because it branched out into the entire city above, and because the second movie really showcased who Alice was as a character. I remember the third film because it branched out even further to the rest of the country, which was now buried in sand in a true post-apocalyptic zombie landscape that might even remind you of The Walking Dead. You remember the fourth film probably for being the most unoriginal in the pack, but you also remember it for getting back into the fun direction the series kind of lost after the first film, and for Wentworth Miller playing Chris Redfield. I personally remember the fifth movie the most because it was the most fun. I thought it was the best shot, best edited, best choreographed film out of any given movie this series. It also felt the most like a generic video game plot, which I thought was just fun. This movie came out just 3 years ago in 2017, and I didn't remember anything about it. That does not bode very well. I mean, the only thing that I truly remembered about it was some of the things that I saw in the trailer. I know I saw it before because I wrote a review for it on my website, but I honestly felt like I was watching the movie with fresh eyes. So when I began watching it, I didn't know if I was going to be any good or not, but I guess the only thing that I could do is homologate the film for a review. So let's get cracking. This review is brought to you by the word of the day, homologate. To sanction or allow. Resident Evil: The Final Chapter is the final chapter in this video game adaptation franchise starring Milla Jovovich as Alice, one woman against an entire corporation that spans the entire country amid a global zombie outbreak. In this film specifically, Alice must return to where it all started, the Hive, to track down an airborne antivirus that will save the world. But there's only one problem with that. The antivirus could kill Alice too. So while watching this film, I can't say that it's bad. It's actually probably the most important film in the series. Apart from the first movie, it's actually going somewhere substantial. Each film was doing something specific, but it was more along the lines of going with the flow. This happened, so now Alice has to do this. That happened, so now Alice has to go there. Stuff like that. The overall issue was always the same though, and that overall issue was never really something that they were really trying to rectify or fix. And they were in this movie, which I feel like is really important to talk about. That makes this movie substantial, whether you like it or not. Past that, there's some of the series' best visuals, bar none. One of the best sequences in the movie is right at the beginning when Alice is being tracked down by a giant flying thing. I'm not entirely sure what the thing is, but she's facing against it, and the way it's shot is actually pretty good. I don't think anything else in the movie is as good, which tells me that they shot that scene specifically probably for the trailers, but even so, it is good stuff. Now, here's the thing. The movie as a whole is forgettable for a reason. The end goal was probably the best thing about the movie because it's really important, but the way that they executed this goal was not as good. They did what previous films did, and they loaded up the movie with a ton of action sequences and completely ignored character development, which by the way was exactly what they needed to focus on for a final film. They needed to not just close out the overarching storyline throughout the series, but they also needed to close out the character stories. And to do that, you needed more dialogue. You needed more moments where the film took a pause from all the action. It desperately needed that, and it didn't give us that at all. And that is the primary reason as to why this film was forgettable, at least in my opinion. Another problem this film has is some of the worst editing I've seen in any of these films. Heck, it's actually the worst editing I've ever seen in my life, period. I've never seen a more ridiculously choppy film in my entire life. Whenever anybody would fight in this film, there would be like 100 edits within a 10-second window. Please, take a look at this and tell me if it's not bothersome to you. What even is that? Who edits like that? Nobody, because it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. And it's like that constantly throughout the movie, and what upsets me the most about this is that the last film, Retribution, finally figured out how to film action sequences. Retribution zoomed out. It made minimal cuts so that you could tell what was happening, and it was exciting. This movie had those editing issues that the film series started with, right? Everything was just too zoomed in, you couldn't realistically understand what was happening, and even if you could, I doubt you could even believe any of it, or sense any kind of actual actual danger in it, so the editing problems this film has, as well as the lack of story or character development, help make this movie pretty darn forgettable. But the fact that this was technically the most important story out of any of the films, and because the visuals were sometimes really good, I still have this movie rated relatively decently. That technical score is 60% because if it weren't for the editing, this score would actually be quite a bit higher. The bias score is at 82% because I do like this series overall. I had a good enough time with the direction that the film went, and I appreciated the finality of the film. When averaged together, we come to the final score of 71%, 71 out of 100 possible stars, or a C- letter grade. There are most definitely aspects of this movie that I like. I don't want to tell you that, yeah, the editing sucks, and because of that, so does the rest of the film. No, not at all. I will give credit where it's due and say that it has some good elements, and it does. It's just highly flawed and imperfect, but I would like to hear your thoughts on Resident Evil: The Final Chapter in the comment section down below. Did you like it? Do you feel bittersweet that it ended? As for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this review, because there's always more like it coming out each and every single day. Hit the subscribe button and bell to be notified when I come out with my month-long ranking video where I'm talking about every movie that I saw all October. And until then, guys, peace out.
Dave examines movies we just watch for fun. Davey is the expert. He is the #1 critic that I go to when I need a movie pick. Thanks for joining up with us.